So, as discussed, let us start this third technical session for today. Thankfully for me and all of us, this is the last session for today in this 3-day mega convention. Professional excellence being the theme and topic being ethics and integrity in accounting are the cornerstones of trust. Today, we gather to delve into the foundation principles that uphold the very basic fabric of our profession, ethics and integrity. In a world where trust is the currency, our interactions, the ethical conduct of accountants is of paramount importance. Our session today promises to be a beacon of insight as we navigate the intricacies of ethical considerations and vital role integrity plays in maintaining the trust bestowed upon us. It is an honor to have with us distinguished panel of experts who will share their perspectives on these cornerstones. Without further delay, I invite our esteemed panelists to join us on the stage. Please join me extending a warm welcome to our esteemed panel. At the outset, I request respected Central Counsel Sir, Mr. C.V. Chitale ji, to please come up on the dais and take his place. I would like to request the first panelist, who is widely recognized as one of the India's foremost corporate attorneys. He's also a qualified chartered accountant, burns the candle on both the ends, runs half marathons, loves jazz, and is very, very passionate about taxation laws. The attitude to work and play trickles down from Mr. Ajay Bahl from AZB Partners to please raise the dais. I request Arvinder Pal Singh ji, chartered accountant, to be an eminent speaker to please occupy his seat. Now I have the privilege to share dais with a fellow member of ICAI, who is director of a company which is exclusive knowledge partner for various leading CA firms. This is the only company in India which is working exclusively for chartered accountants' knowledge and process support. He has vast experience in the field of Companies Act, internal audits, accounting, auditing, and currently working in the training and implementation of IFRS and New Companies Act 2013. I welcome none other than CA Aseem Trivedi, sir, with all of us on the dais. I now request the Chief Executive Officer of Mauritius Institute of Professional Accountants, MIPA, the regulatory body of the accountant profession in Mauritius, who with his executive experience and achievement in the field of accounting, auditing, corporate governance and ethics, brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise, none other than Mr. Kamal Raj Sadien. Please, sir, we welcome you on the dais. Now it is time to welcome the chairman and the moderator of the session, who is a qualified chartered accountant for nearly 40 years, has worn many hats, including that of president of being, the past president of being the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, worked with, advised some of the leading business India's companies and businesses, including serving as the senior vice president at Reliance Industries Limited for a tenure of about 11 years. Who can it be none other than our very own Nihar S. Jambusaria, sir. A huge round of applause for this man. As we set the ball rolling, I request the Central Council member, C.V. Chitale, sir, for his opening remarks.
Good evening, friends. Ethics is not negotiable, not optional. Ethics is the only way out. Ethics is quite essential for chartered accountants profession. Friends, these were the words of Honorable Vice President of India, Sri Jagdeep Dhankarji, when he inaugurated FlowPack yesterday. And friends, you will also appreciate that that is the fact of life that distinguishes profession from the others. As far as this ethics is concerned, I believe that it is more a concept of economic reality rather than moral reality. Because with empty stomach, you cannot preach ethics. So if there is empowerment of profession economically, I think ethics would certainly fall in line. Everybody would follow the ethics. Some days ago, I received one WhatsApp message, you also might have received, that thieves are necessary for the purpose of running economy. And then he explained, because of thieves, you have doors, you have locks, you have police and so on. So maybe likewise we can say that those who do not follow ethics, I think they are contributors to this theory and practice of ethics code. Otherwise, those who follow ethics, for them there is no need of reading the ethics. But then fine, every society is mixed bag, and maybe for minority, those who don't follow, you need to have some framework just to tell them that you are beyond this particular framework. As far as our institute is concerned, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, we have code of ethics into two components. One is the law has prescribed in Chartered Accountants Act, particularly in schedules, that when a chartered accountant, whether in practice or otherwise, would be considered as non-compliant, and there that is the legal requirement. There are other legislations also like Companies Act. They prescribe certain don'ts for the professionals. You can't accept more than number of audits, maybe rendering other services by auditors. There is a stipulation in Companies Act. So likewise, those are various prescriptions under the law. And then we have principle-based code of ethics, which tells us in the given circumstances how a professional should behave and should not. Friends, today we are going to discuss this topic of professional excellence, ethics and integrity in accounting profession. And we have with us former president of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and present president of SAFA, CA Nihar Jambusaria, who would be acting as a moderator for the session. And we have with us eminent panelists, which were just introduced: Kamal Raj Sadien, Aseem Trivedi, Arvinder Pal Singh, and Mr. Ajay Bahl. I welcome all of you, gentlemen, for the purpose of enlightening this facet of ethics so that we are more enriched, and whatever Vice President told yesterday, maybe we reinforce this in the profession. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I now request the chairman of the session to please set the tone of the day and take the panel discussion forward.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I think before I start, may I request all those who are sitting at the back to come in the front rows. Of course, right from school and college days, I also used to prefer the back benches, but in a big auditorium like this, if people are in front and where the discussion is on a topic like ethics, probably it would be better if you are closer to the speakers and panelists. Friends, very rightly put the concept of ethics by the Central Council member and the chairman of the Ethical Standards Boards of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Mr. C.V. Chitale, that ethics is absolute. Even when one of our past presidents, Mr. Bansi Mehta, was interviewed, he also expressed the same view that ethics is absolute, it is not relative, and it cannot be compared to situations. Yesterday, the Vice President of India also expressed the same view that ethics is non-compromisable. And it is very evident that there was no formal ethical standards earlier when the profession commenced. There was no act which prescribed what is doable, what is not doable. But the formal ethics came into play only when it was observed that in a profession of accountancy, which is a noble profession and where people put a lot of trust on the signature put by an accountant, professional accountant, it is necessary that they follow at least the minimum standards. So what we get from all these is that ethics should come from within. Chitale ji rightly put that for those who want to follow ethics, no code is required. They would know what is right, what is wrong, and after being qualified as a professional accountant, somebody need not teach us what is right, what is wrong. So those who want to follow ethics, there is nothing to be laid down, nothing to be taught, nothing to be discussed. But when we have a formal code of ethics, and where things are put that so many acts, if done, are punishable, they are sanctionable, others are not so clearly laid down. They exist in some part of code of ethics, some fall under other misconduct. And in this complex scenario, and particularly when you are facing competition from everywhere, from the other professions, from the world, from outside, from within the country, and everywhere, one must know clearly what is not doable. So today we have got experts, particularly those who even deal with disciplinary cases, those who are at the helm of affairs of the institute, and those who are in practice. Mr. Ajay Bahl, Mr. AP Singh, Mr. Sadien, Mr. Aseem Trivedi are all senior professionals who have practiced on ethical standards. They have also handled many disciplinary cases, and they would know certain nuances which professional accountants would like to know. And particularly those who are involved in a test function, for them, it is necessary to know certain finer aspects of ethics and what is sanctionable, what is not sanctionable, that is, what is punishable, what is not punishable. And let us commence discussion with them instead of me putting in things in the form of a monologue. So I will start with some of the questions where our panelists will deal with those questions along with some practical scenarios and will provide a very useful guidance. There are certain situations where clear guidance may not be available and where one has to put hand on heart and take decision whether this is doable, whether it is not doable. And one will arrive at right conclusion without anybody's guidance. So I would start with the first question straight away. While ethics are absolute, they are not negotiable. They are not something which can be compromised. And each one of us agrees with it. If you dial a phone on the phone number of any official of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and by the time the official picks up the phone, you will hear the tagline that the institute is married to excellence, independence, integrity. And in today's session, ethics and integrity are put as a main theme on which our discussion will be based. Apart from this, independence, transparency are the aspects which are very important for any profession. So while ethics are absolute, this cannot be compromised. I would ask Mr. Ajay Bahl, the accounting profession that has become extremely competitive, internally as well as externally. And if I put it in little bit more detail, internally, because every professional would think if I charge less, probably it would be an advantageous position, which actually is not. In real terms, in terms of ethics, we may put it as undercutting also. So the profession has internally become very competitive, not only in terms of charging fees, but in terms of delivering the assignments. Even externally, if you see, compared to the accounting profession, you will not find so many restrictions, sanctionable events or acts. If I name a few, say profession of law, profession of medicine, where you do not find so many restrictions very specifically laid down. In this scenario, in competitive world, while we all accept that ethics should not be compromised, how in this atmosphere a professional accountant can progress, can stick to ethics, but at the same time remove all hurdles, face the competition, and make a success story. Can you please deal with this situation?
Thank you, Nihar. I think the question I'd like to answer in the context in which it has been posed is not in in a vacuum. The entire issue arises from the fact that trustworthy financial reporting is a absolute necessity. It was spoken about in the last session, and we all recognize, therefore, that there is an ecosystem that should work, which should ensure that this is the quality is so clear that people can rely upon it, especially a country like India, which is depending on investors, both internal and external. So that is a given. I don't mean to sound that I'm undermining any of those aspects. And while I might be a little contrarian to what has been going on, but that's what lawyers do. You have to always challenge the obvious. Fundamentally, ethics is very good to use as a term. Integrity is very good to use as a term, but it's the term of English. And ethics, what are ethics supposed to be? Principally, ethics are supposed to be non-sanctionable norms of behavior. Once they are actually a part of the law, they cease to be ethics because they become law. So first of all, I think we should be clear that ethics that are, if they are norms of behavior over and above what the law requires, they cannot be absolute. 5 different people will have 5 different views on ethics. Ethics can be, what your ethical standards are can be based on how you've grown up, your economic circumstances. It can be sometimes a luxury, depending on where you are from an economic standpoint. So to expect that when we use words like integrity and ethics, there can be one common standard, I think is expecting far too much from any profession, let alone a profession which is, as you said, already facing competition. Therefore, as I see it, with due respect to what's been said about, auditors needing to be this and accountant needing to be this and that, it's all very good. I'm a lawyer now. We don't have any of these problems. I was an accountant earlier. And I do feel some sympathy here that apart from what is codified, and in your code of ethics, you already have the R and the A. R is what are required. We've already gone beyond the schedules to the Act. But beyond all of that, to then expect yet another higher standard from the audit profession, when there is no actual standard which can be prescribed or be prescriptive, I think is expecting a bit too much. And I think is imposing a burden by the use of very nice words, but without giving any real guidance to them as to what that actually means or does not mean. So yes, I think that the expectation, if that is the expectation, then I think that expectation is unreasonable for my accounting friends. That's my view.
Yeah, I think as an extension to this, I will ask a question to Mr. A.P. Singh, extension of what Ajay ji has said, that we have norms laid down in 2 schedules of the Chartered Accountants Act. What during the course of all these years of experience you have come across that beyond this, and Ajay ji has put that it would pose too much of burden if expectations are too high and a professional accountant is expected to be under all those expectations. So what beyond the laid down non-sanctionable acts do you think is in the nature of expectation? And would such an act for sanctions, would such an act be punishable? Would it be sanctionable? Or could you give some examples where something can be done, something cannot be done? And what kind of guidance would you further expect from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for its members? And in the same manner, because here members are from other countries also. So what the professional accounting institutes should provide as guidance so that members have more clarity on ethics and its practice?
So thank you, Mr. Jambusaria. Thank you for that question. When you refer to the 2 schedules to the Chartered Accountants Act, that's necessarily the statute as is applicable in India. And in that act, there's a particular section, that's section 22. Section 22 is the one that defines what is professional and other misconduct. And it is section 22 that leads us to the 2 schedules contained in the Chartered Accountants Act. But what needs to be remembered is that section 22, the wording is very clear. It is inclusive. It uses the word includes all that is stated in the two schedules to the Chartered Accountants Act. So first of all, the wording is not exhaustive. It is inclusive. Secondly, the last three words used in that section, if I'm not mistaken, are in any other circumstances. So what the section really says is that we've specified a whole lot of things in the various parts of the two schedules which will constitute professional or other misconduct. But that does not mean that professional or other misconduct is limited to what is contained in those two schedules only. It may extend beyond that for the simple reason that the section by itself is inclusive and other circumstances are also to be referred to. And then there are various case laws, and I'm not taking you to those judicial pronouncements, which have also made it clear that if something is not even specified in those two schedules to the Chartered Accountants Act, but which is interpreted or may be believed to be something that hurts the profession, or the expectations from the profession, or the expectations from the members who practice the profession are the members of the institute, that would constitute, if not professional misconduct, definitely other misconduct. And there are case laws which have been settled, at least in India, by the Honorable Supreme Court, where also individuals who were not discharging professional duties were also held guilty of misconduct for reasons other than discharge of professional duties. And I'll explain. We have 3,000 individuals gathered here in Ahmedabad today for GLOPAC. Now, if you will remember, many, many years ago, people my generation would remember that one cricketer from India went to England and thought that nobody was looking at him and shoplifted from that store, and he thought that he could walk out. Very unfortunate incident. And while he was walking out, the sirens and the signals went off in the store and he was held back there. And he was fined. He was taken to the local police station. He had to be bailed out. Now, supposing this, we are all 3,000 of us gathered here, I would say even inadvertently, even by mistake, somebody enters the store while we are wearing the badge, the identity card, that we are chartered accountants or members of profession from any other country, and the members, as far as the application in any other country, would have to be reviewed or viewed in terms of what the laws in that country are. But definitely for the professional accountants in our country, and you're wearing the badge and you walk into one of the stores there and you pick up something and you forget to pay and the sirens go on and the police is called and hauled and you're taken, that individual's taken. And I say it's maybe inadvertently done. Somebody may be tired, exhausted after all these discussions that we are having through the day, maybe facing a mental fatigue, a mental fog, and that may have happened, but that is sufficient and appropriate ground for that individual to be charged for other misconduct and be punished for other misconduct under the Chartered Accountants Act. That's sufficient. It's absolutely sufficient. This is with reference to I tried to relate an example so that we can relate it today. The exact circumstances in the case laws that are available and where we have a ruling from the Honorable Apex Court of India also is of similar nature. There's a reason behind it. And here there's a slight difference of opinion from what my very senior member of the profession, Ajay ji, has said. And there's just a different way of looking at it. You see, what is really this ethics, the way I look at it? For me, I'm speaking in this microphone and my voice is getting amplified. There are these lights which are, glaring upon us, and so that you can see me and I can see you, and the hall is well lighted. The air conditioning is on and the environment is sufficiently comfortable that we are enjoying and sitting comfortably in this entire atmosphere, in this wonderful place at the Mahatma Mandir in Ahmedabad. Now, this microphone is working and the lights are working, and the LED screen behind me is working, and the air conditioning is working, because there is a supply of electricity into the different equipments. There's a supply of electricity here, there's a supply of electricity to LED, there's a supply of electricity to the electric bulbs, there's a supply of electricity to the air conditioning system. My question to you and all my colleagues, my friends in this profession is, have you ever seen electricity? Has anybody ever seen electricity? Electricity is not seen, it drives. Ethics are not seen, ethics drive. You take electricity away and everything falls flat. It doesn't function. Everything will become so inconvenient. We could still be meeting, but this will not amplify. We will not be easily visible. This will get hot and humid very soon. It won't be comfortable as an air conditioner. The wonderful screen at the back will not be possible. If all of this has to work in a seamless and a proper manner, we need electricity. And similarly, in this profession, what drives the profession is the integrity and the ethics. They're not seen, they drive. Certain things are there around us. They're not visible, they drive. We are all human beings. And some of you may have studied science, and you will find that there is the magnetic field around us. Nothing works without the magnetic field. This magnetic field around everything in this world, in this entire cosmic structure, it's all with the magnetic field. Has anybody, like electricity, has anybody seen the magnetic field? But magnetic field is the essential backdrop in which everything works in the cosmic structure, in this entire cosmic being. In this entire cosmos, magnetic field, you can't think about the laws of nature without the magnetic field. Similarly, you can't think about the profession, can't imagine the profession without integrity and ethics. So they are there. If we take them out, everything falls flat. Now, whether we use laws or voluntarily we accept them, that's a separate issue. But the point is, human beings have always needed legal sanctions and punishments as a deterrent so that the laws and expectations are complied with and they're not broken. If you don't put in the punishments, even when we are driving on the road, we are not going to allow the other car to pass. There's a green light, there's an amber, and there's a red light. And if you cross over, there's an automatic, photograph it being done, and we'll have a fine. If we don't have that, we don't stop. Today we have become so conscious about not driving beyond a certain speed because we know we are going to be photographed. There's automatic cameras fitted in different parts. That's what happens. That's the human psychology. Human psychology needs laws to deter action which is not appropriate. And that is where the intervention of the legal system comes in, when we do not implement and accept and we do not apply those principles of ethics, those principles of integrity to our professional conduct. That's why the force of law is required. But ethics, integrity, very important, and essentially what's there in the 2 schedules is there. But beyond that, there is so much, and especially there is one clause, which is clause 2 of part 4 of the 1st schedule, which says anything that brings disrepute to the profession or the institute. In India, it's in clause 2, part 4 of the 1st schedule. And anything that brings disrepute, and like this individual who could have inadvertently shoplifted, brings disrepute to the profession and the institute. That's where the person, and so that's too wide. The definitions just don't end, and an individual can be brought to books even when these are issues that may not be related directly or even indirectly to any professional engagement.
Right, and I will quote one example on what you have said. In United States of America, in San Francisco, only in the Frisco area, if somebody steals anything up to $1,000, there is no punishment, there is no sanction. So a professional accountant was in a departmental store in San Francisco with his very young son. And when they were shopping, the son observed that some young people of US collected some material, and without paying the bill, they straight away went out of the store and nothing was done to them. So he asked father that we have collected so many goods and you are going to pay the bill at the counter. Can't we also do something of this type and not pay the bill? So father, knowing the law, explained to the son that if we take goods up to $1,000, we can take it out of the store without making any payment and police cannot catch us or there is no sanction. But I am a professional accountant. All these things don't suit us. So we should not indulge into all this. So even if you buy $100 thing, I will pay for it and we will walk out with high head. So what you said is right, whether laid down or not, the profession has got this goodwill and credit only on account of the ethics that our members follow. And that is how I think yesterday the Vice President mentioned that even Prime Minister said that the weight of the signature of a professional accountant carries more weight than even a Prime Minister's signature. So let us stick to it and just see that in spite of all odds and all competitions, we follow the ethics to the core to which our PAOs are also married. Now I think I come to a question which is related to a recent amendment made in India and which is prevailing in the International Code of Ethics and which is popularly known as NOCLAR, non-compliance with law and regulations, which is now from 1st October 22 required to be complied with by members in practice and members not in practice. And a serious concern is being raised by some members as to how to comply with this, how a professional accountant is supposed to know all laws which are applicable to all business entities in India. And we have in India standard on auditing SA 250, which is exactly on same lines with ISA 250, where guidance is provided as to how to deal with this situation and whether NOCLAR is as dangerous, as furious as it appears to be. And today, let us combine what is the international position, what is the Indian position. We have Mr. Kamal Sadien from the Institute of Mauritius, and I would ask him, NOCLAR, you may explain this along with the ISA 250 and explain to the members what exactly is expected of the members so far as NOCLAR is concerned, those who are in service, those who are in practice.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank ICAI for having given me the opportunity as a grandson of Indian migrants who to be back here in the country, in their country of origin, to be able to address such an august assembly. As you stated correctly, NOCLAR is part and parcel of the International Code of Ethics. In Mauritius, we comply with the ISBA code, formerly known as the IFA code, which has 5 fundamental values: integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and the last one, which is the one that concerns us here, is professional behavior. Professional behavior says we should not act in such a manner as to bring disrepute to the profession, as rightly said by my colleague A.B. Singh, but also that we should always act in compliance with the laws and regulations of the jurisdiction where we operate. So this is not, again, something that can be compromised. And as I suspect in India, it's the same as we have in Mauritius. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. But there's one thing that could help all of us as accountants, because I'm also a professional accountant. It's not to comply with the code, but rather to live the code. We have these values, and if we abide by these values in our everyday lives, not only in our professional lives, this will help us make sure that not only we do our jobs correctly, but also we set the example to everybody as to what a proper accountant does and what others could be doing as well.
Adding to it, sir, in India, we have SA250 and nuclear both. Our nuclear, which we have diluted to an extent, because in India, we have so many industrial laws. Child Labor Act is there, Factory Act is there. Even in India, our client is being penalized on the toilet ratio against the workers, and Pollution Control Act, and so many acts are there. So members' concern was there that how we can evaluate the compliance of these laws as far as Indian concerns are there, Indian enterprises are there. So nuclear, which was originally proposed in our code of ethics, has been diluted, and more or less we got that particular nuclear provision to the tune of SA 250. SA 250 clearly mentions that audit should design the audit procedure, apply the audit procedure to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence for those laws and regulations which are having direct impact on the financial statement. As far as other laws is concerned, we need to inquire with the client, we need to apply certain procedure just to check whether there is any instance of non-compliance is there. So there was a confusion in the profession, which I am clarifying with this podium, that as far as other laws are concerned, like Pollution Control Act, labor laws, industrial laws, which are not having direct impact on financial statement. Maybe there are some industrial laws which may lead to cessation of going concern of an entity. There we need to apply more and more audit procedures and get sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. But certain laws and regulation where the penalty can be there on enterprise, in that case, we need to apply only those procedures where we can have a reasonable assurance that there is no non-compliance. But for those laws and regulations which are directly affecting the financial statement, we need to design and apply the audit procedure and get the sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding that. Our working paper should contain each and every audit procedure, each and every audit evidence which is significant to prove that we had a reasonable assurance that those laws and regulations have been complied with, which are, if violated, will get an impact on financial statement. Rest of the laws and regulation, we can have lighter audit procedures for that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. AP Singh.
As the expectations from the professional accountants are really rising and the financial entities are becoming larger and more complex because the economy is growing and the expanse of the entities is much, much beyond than what it used to be, say, just a couple of decades ago. What needs to be clearly understood is that even before we refer to SA 250, there is clear-cut requirement under SQC 1 that a professional accountant should accept only such engagement for which he or she believes that there is proper training, proper resources available within the firm to be able to deliver the results of that engagement. So since there are laws from, various laws that are now today involved, if I do not, or my firm does not have the capability of dealing with the complexities of a particular industry, my first requirement under SQC 1 is not to accept that engagement. That is the first, that's the entry. At the entry level itself, first, there is an important requirement to assess whether that kind of technical skill, expertise, and experience, I think the word experience is also used there, is available within the firm to deal with the nature of the professional engagement concerned. That's point number one. And point number two, over the years, in the last 18 or 20 years, SA 250 has been revised thrice. If you compare the SA 250s and if you look at the requirements under the three SA 250s, you will find a gradual movement. In the first version that we read towards the beginning of the century, the SA 250 exists, as where the requirement is that the auditor is not required to be checking for the compliance of the laws. The management representation in that respect is good enough. Now, the language gets diluted as you move to the next and the next version of SA 250, and the SA 250 version that we have today now is the third diluted version. So there is a movement taking place there, requiring the professional accountants to have sufficient and appropriate knowledge of the laws that would be required for the conduct of or the completion of that particular engagement. But the most important point that must never be forgotten is that we must not even accept an engagement where we are not very sure about the technical skill and the expertise and experience being available within the firm to discharge those professional duties.
True. So this requirement is to be seen in conjunction with SQC 1, SA 250, both put together. However, practically, I think an audit firm can design a separate audit procedure to check NOCLAR so that nothing is left out, and particularly on inquiry with the client on his own going through the law, one must ascertain whether compliance with all laws is done by the organization and accordingly report. But then again, a person who is in service at a particular level, who is required to give that assurance to the management, to the audit committee, that there is compliance with all the laws. Practically, I understand in industry what happens is they take separate assurances from head of each department. The direct tax head gives assurance that there is compliance with direct tax law, indirect tax law head gives it separately, the secretarial department gives separately, and finally the legal department gives overall assurance to the board of directors. It is something on which care is required to be taken, and I would rather say that while following ethics, even the members should make it sure that you charge fees which are appropriate to the assignment, to ensure that you have appropriate training and all infrastructure which is necessary to carry out those kinds of assignment, and not sigh out on even fixing your professional fees. Now again, to Aseem Trivedi, I will come to the next question to you for the next one. There are many rules peculiar to Indian jurisdiction. I'm talking about Indian jurisdiction particularly, although there may be professional accountants from other institutes, on advertisement, solicitation by members, particularly those in practice, bar on engagement in other business or occupation. Whereas many other jurisdictions do not have similar restrictions. Do you think that these restrictions continue to serve the purpose of independence, public interest, and transparency, or some amendment is required on this front, looking at the current scenario?
Solicitation is something which is prohibited, and advertisement is also prohibited. And absolute prohibition was there till 2006. And after 2006, we have diluted some provisions under clause 6 and clause 7. I'm just giving you an example that we had a provision in clause number 6 that you cannot respond to any tender. Then we diluted it in 2009 Code of Ethics that you can respond to a tender. And when we found that there are certain misconduct cases regarding tenders, we again banned that particular tender. And then we again opened that particular tender with certain restrictions that if minimum fees is prescribed, then only that tender could be filled. And still we are struggling with that some of the cases coming to us from a Noida, one case came where a member had said that I have prescribed the tender. Below the, you said that minimum fees has to be prescribed in tender, you should respond to tender. I responded to that tender and I quoted fees below that minimum fees, which is given in the tender. Now, what I say is we cannot codify ethics. Ethics is something between the two things which I am now mentioning. You cannot codify ethics. What is ethics? You have right to respond the tender. Now, what you are doing, you have right to respond that tender where the minimum fees is quoted. Now, what you are doing, you are responding to tender below the minimum fees. What is your right to respond to tender and what is right in responding such tender? That difference is called ethics. You cannot say that anything which is codified, I am complying with that, so it is ethics. No, the same thing. Many voices are there in WhatsApp groups where they are saying why Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is so stringent about the solicitation, so stringent about the advertising, why we cannot have our own YouTube channel. We have allowed that, yes, you must have YouTube channel. Now you want, why monetization of YouTube channel is not there? If we allow monetization of YouTube channel, then you have billions of viewers and then fake likes and then fake. So anything which is open, it is open for good, but people started misusing it. So we cannot make it open for anything. And social media is such a kind of world where once you give something, it cannot be taken back again. And something, so we are keep coming with regulations on social media guidelines, YouTube channels, websites, and all that. But still, violations can be found out. Violations are being witnessed just because they are not understanding the things in a proper manner. Once we understand what is the nuance of that particular law, we cannot comply with it. We cannot codify it. And social media is such kind of a thing where everything cannot be exhaustively quoted. Even in our clause number 7, we have advertising guidelines. We have codified the guidelines and with certain stringent clauses where we have certain stringent clauses where we need to amend this. That font size could not be more than 14. We have specified our guidelines like that. Font size could not be more than 14. But I may request to Institute that we need to have certain amendments over there. Otherwise, we need to have a disciplined kind of environment, and we need strict guidelines over the solicitation because it is demand of the profession. We are surviving in this country and having such a dignified image only because of our ethics which we have. You can compare, I'm not demeaning, I'm not going far, I'm just saying, just compare the disciplinary cases against chartered accountant and just compare the disciplinary cases in other similar profession. You will find that Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is having its head high, that we are maintaining quality of the profession, and that's why we are enjoying the monopoly in this country since long, and we would going to definitely enjoy the monopoly in this country. Why? These quality standards. So I think we must have this solicitation and we must stop this solicitation and advertising. They're correct. Thank you.
Okay, this is a topic on which I'm happy that there are multiple views, and Ajay ji would like to contribute. After that, even some view from the Ethical Standard Board chairman is here. He would also like to give. Ajay ji, you may.
So I don't want to leave this matter in confusion because lots of examples have been given. I'm very familiar with the fact that we have a clause which says bring disrepute, but I'll give you examples because you asked what are the kind of examples that fall in and what fall out. I was on the board of discipline for 5 years. See, first of all, what AP with respect referred to shoplifting is a crime. If it's a crime, the question of other misconduct and bringing disrepute is an obvious one. I wrote the order in the board of discipline where we had a member of the institute who was an independent director of a public sector bank. And we found that he was peddling influence in getting loans. And his position was, I've been discharged from the criminal case. and the FIR will take 20 years. And there we said that at the end of the standard is lower. What you are doing is clearly bringing disrepute to a professional, because you are hobnobbing with people who are trying to get loans, and you should, as representing the profession, should not have been doing that. But let me give you the flip side, and I like the audience to respect. We keep talking about ethics. We had cases that came to us. The chartered accountant gives a guarantee on behalf of a third party. The third party doesn't pay. The CA doesn't have money to pay. The bank moves disrepute and asks the institute to sanction the chartered accountant. Where will you draw the line? We had marital cases where people had given powers of attorney, women had given power of attorneys to their spouses. They were having marital differences. The power of attorney was not being revoked. And she wrote to the institute saying this is unethical behavior and therefore sanction him. So the question that I'm asking, if you want to just keep throwing this line, let's ask the audience, where do you want to draw the line? A criminal act, obviously, when the section says any other act which becomes disrepute is fine. But can you start stretching this to this extent that, yes, you steal a car, of course the CA will be creating disrepute. But if you have a marital dispute, of course somebody can say it's unethical. That you had a dispute with your wife, she wants you to revoke the power of attorney, you should revoke the power of attorney. Ethical? I would say it's not ethical, you'd say ethical. But is that the standard that we have for the chartered accountants? I just wanted to be clear. I have no disagreement with the fact that you require, in fact, the AP actually established what I was saying, that if you have sanctions, make it sanctionable. Beyond that, of course, there are ways that you can determine what is right and wrong, but you can't have shifting sands where just because the person is a CA, he must or she must be liable to a standard which no other person is required in non-professional life. But yes, stealing a car, of course, that is ridiculous. Hobnobbing loans is ridiculous. But yes, not paying up on a guarantee just because you're a CA, I think it's unfair to say that that is unethical and you should sanction the chartered accountant.
Yeah,
I think,
hello.
yeah, sure.
I want to
Mr.
ask
Chitale.
and not clarify. I want to ask one different facet on advertisement. As we are aware that in Schedule 6, 7 clause say that there is an embargo on advertisement solicitation to an extent. A chartered accountant who is in practice gives advertisement in South Africa for doing some accounting work. Whether that would be covered by those schedules. Because there are these schedules, but then we have section 1, subsection 2. It says that the act extends to the India. So this act is beyond India. So your views.
Okay, Mr. AP Singh.
I just
little briefly, because I
Yeah,
think there are 2, 3
right.
important questions.
I just wanted to bring forward, we were talking about solicitation and advertisement and stuff like that. I think and this is purely a personal opinion. And I think the regime that we have in this country regarding advertisement and those guidelines and the restrictions and the solicitations have somehow, basically in our country, we have somehow managed to become the 5th largest economy, as Chopra ji was saying in the previous session. But if we have to get to the 3rd, we can't get to the 3rd with this kind of regime. It's got to be a more contemporary regime. It's definitely got to be more contemporary. Something that was perhaps conceived, thought of, written in a particular mold was maybe justifiable about 50, 60 years ago. The world's totally changed. It's a very different world. The realities are entirely different. The disconnect is not marginal. The disconnect is more than humongous. It's a radical disconnect. And the pace at which the change takes place is beyond our imagination at times. I think if the leaders of the profession are listening, and this is just a personal opinion, I think something needs to be done to bring our regime as far as advertisement solicitation moving forward to a more contemporary level than what we are today. And that's what is the young professionals today would need the most. That's what, and as they say in Hindi, इनको उड़ने दो ना, आसमान तक उड़ लेंगे, एक बार उड़ने तो दो, इतना कैद करके रख रखा है तो उड़ने ही नहीं देते हैं. Let them fly, they can do it, let them compete, let them do whatever. There is a change in this regime, and that's a personal opinion that's required.
Yeah. So we have seen the divergent views. Let me tell you, I agree with the proposition that on advertisement, really something is required to be done. In what way decent advertisement and opportunity to all which would call for equity is required to be done. One should once again deliberate. Time changes, and every time we discuss, I think the situation, circumstances, and everything is required to be taken care of. So, Chitleji, there are two very
Yeah.
important questions. If you can briefly complete,
No,
please.
on advertisement, there are two aspects. One is
Yeah.
within the confines of whatever is provided in the schedule, we are trying to have more fair play for profession. And part B is we are also proposing certain changes in the act. So we would solicit
Yeah.
whatever changes are required. We would pass in the council and then pass it on to the government for
Yeah,
consideration.
that is a good news that something is being done and something is in the offing. So with that, again, Ajay ji, I will come back to you. You will agree with me that with the passage of time and advent of technology, particularly with technology at the disposal of everyone, the perception that a professional accountant or rather an auditor is a watchdog is undergoing change. Now, with the limitation of time, the limitation of scope of audit, particularly statutory audits, do you think that professional accountant is not a watchdog? Or to what extent the scope is extended with the availability of technology at your disposal and with the expectations of stakeholders? To what extent this concept of watchdog has undergone change, and to what extent the expectations are reasonable, or the expectations are beyond what they should be?
Thanks, Nihar. I think that's it's a very nuanced issue, and clearly, I think this watchdog and bloodhound is of course out of favor. But remember, dogs are still very important in society. So I keep telling my friends, at least you are still in that category of a dog rather than something else. Humans have got lesser today. If you know, you can't get rid of a dog from the street. So at least you're still in that category. But I think the issue is, first of all, technology. To be honest, my personal view from what I've seen is technology should be a tool. It should not overtake human judgment, which I think is beginning to happen sometimes, where the human element, the application of mind is going to be, is not adequate. But it all boils down to what is the importance and the requirements of professional skepticism. I think the expectation, when I used to be in the company law committee as well, and what I used to hear from Mr. Srinivas, who was the MCA secretary, he said, Ajay, we don't expect an auditor to find the rat in the room and to find every rodent and every chinti in the room, but we expect you to at least see the elephant in the room and see the giraffe. I added the giraffe, but at least we expect you to see that, which is all at the end of the day about professional skepticism. I don't think anybody can expect an auditor to find every fraud, though unfortunately, the way expectations have built up and hindsight bias is causing a lot of heartburn to the community, and rightly so. I don't think it's fair to say that every fraud must get picked up, but I do believe that there is a need for professional skepticism to not be overtaken by things like, well, it was approved, there's a management representation. If the audit evidence is actually what is staring you in the face, is contrary to what you believe represents a genuine transaction, then whether the board has approved it or the MR you've got from the company, I don't think that's enough. And that's not just India, internationally. There are international cases where even damages have been given to shareholders because the court has held that if you had exercised skepticism, even the fraudulent statements that were given to the auditor could have been identified as fraud. So there is an expectation, but I don't think it's about every fraud. It's about what you can see on the face of it and that's one kind. It may not be the elephant in the room, but if it's enough to look at, when you look at an invoice and you say, this can't be true, you have to call it out. And obviously you can't miss the elephant in the room. I think that's where the profession is heading. That's what the expectation, and we have to learn to deal with it.
I think the message is that one cannot stick to the old rule of strict watchdog. And certainly with the availability of technology, whatever additional information is available, one should look at that information, that detail, and use the professional skepticism. And particularly, I may go a step forward and say that wherever there is suspicion, the auditor may suggest to the audit committee that you may have a separate forensic audit and verify these and these aspects. This can be done.
Point I'll add here. The other very interesting issue is that while our reporting is actually the relationship is with the company, often is lost sight of the fact that our report is issued to the shareholders. So when you said report to the audit committee, I've gone ahead and told my friends that that's not enough. If the audit committee doesn't act on something you think is wrong, you have to point it out. It's not a defense because you ultimately report to the shareholders. And if you think that something has been inadequately done, whether it reflects on internal control, onboarding, one way or the other, you must find a way to alert the shareholders to it. So just adding an additional dimension.
Yeah, Mr. AP Singh.
I'm not going into the detection of fraud issue, but just a very important point which is made here by Ajay Bahl ji, that the current requirements under, and we refer to NOCLAR, current requirements under the new code of ethics stretch to an extent that if an auditor finds reason, the auditor may even report to the various government authorities about non-compliance with laws by that business entity. So if the reasoning is so strong that he believes that there is good reason that the authorities need to be informed, even that has been required to do. That is also now cast upon as a duty under the code of ethics, under the new code of.
Section 143 also of the company.
Section 143 is
that
something
deals
else.
with
I'm not talking of 143.12, sir. What you're saying is right. But here, if there is a non-compliance with the laws to an extent where they believe that it would be a big loss to the country, or it may ultimately end up as a big hazard to the public in general or anything, those matters need to be brought to the attention of the authorities concerned. And the word used is authority. It could be a tax authority, it could be a revenue authority, it could be any other kind of authority, and that's now covered under the new code of ethics. Itna section hai, 360 ke aaspaas hai kuch of the new code of ethics. It's somewhere around 360. So
Yeah.
360, 360.31 or 360.21 or 22. It's there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think now we are running out of time, and one question I would like to ask, I would ask the anchor whether we can have 5 more minutes, because this is the last session. I'm taking this liberty, and I think audience would be happy to listen to some of the views. Mr. Sadien, very quickly, because one important question I would like to have posed before we conclude this session.
Very quickly, in addition to the various elements of the financial statements, one key element that is going to come forward very soon and is going to impact all of us is anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism. This is something that is taking much more importance, and sometimes basic verifications are not being done. I'll just give you one simple example. Just look at the balance sheet and you look at the cash book. You look at what is the volume of money that came into that company, and you compare it with the turnover that is declared plus the tax. And you'll find some cases where the amounts that came into the company were twice or thrice that amount that was declared in the financial statements. And there was absolutely no explanation, and there was no test done on that. So that is where you will have to be careful. And this has got absolutely nothing to do with the financial statements that you'll be seeing in front of you, but you have to look behind it. Do simple tests sometimes can give you much efficient results and make you safe, because that's one of the most important things there. You have to be safe. You have to take a decision on whether or not you're going to give a report, a clean report or a modified report. But this is something where you have to do the work, and nobody else should be relied upon to do that work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And with all these views, I may only say that wherever, with the help of technology, with the additional information available on a button click. Wherever there is clear-cut indication of some violation which requires to be reported to shareholders or authorities, that must be done. But wherever there is just a smell test, which requires further detailed investigation, perhaps indication to audit committee that this requires further investigation could suffice. That is what we may conclude from this. And now coming to this last question, which I would put to all the panelists, and combined with that one sub question, that a professional accountant or a firm of such accountants, while acting as auditor, may find itself in a situation where there is difference of opinion with the management on certain issue, whether it is going concern, whether it is anything else. And the auditor feels that he is not so comfortable giving an opinion because it is a controversial subject, but his own opinion is different than what management carries. And he feels that in such a situation, he would like to resign. You may add further situations where it would be justified. Now with ADT 3 form, which a resigning auditor is required to fill and give the reason for his resignation, what are the situations that are emerging for an auditor who is in a dilemma, who would like to resign, whether to give such reasons and resign, whether there is any way in which certain situations where even one situation in our discussion was where fees are fixed subsequently after acceptance of the audit assignment, and it is not adequate enough to carry out the assignment to the extent the checking and verification is required. In all such circumstances, could you guide our participants as to what action they should take if they have to report, and if they have to take decision, what are the nuances? And one sub question is, very recently the NFRA has come out with a circular on fraud, in spite of the fact that there is clear provision, there are standards on auditing. Is it within the purview that it issues even a circular on interpretation, or and ask professional accountants to follow it? So this is one question which is, I think, troubling all those who are in the audit profession, and I would request, starting from there, Mr. Ajayji, and then if everybody could reply this question.
So first, let me answer the latter questions that are about the powers of NAFRA. I mean, to be honest, I don't believe that they have the power to, they can express an opinion as a part like anybody else, but they don't have the power to make something which then is sanctionable. As a part of their investigation, they're entitled to, but they can't, like in fraud reporting, come up with their own view. The better thing would be to chat, with the institute has come up, has had a guidance note for so many years, interact with the institute. And by the way, I agree with the institute's guidance note is right, because the words used there are, in the course of performance of his audit, finds XYZ. If you've been given a file by a client where they've identified the fraud and done everything that was needed, you haven't found it in the performance of your audit. So I don't believe the statutory powers that NAFRA has allows them to come out with the kind of circular that they've come out and expect the profession to be bound by that as a matter of law. To the question you raised about resignation, personally, I believe that if the auditor has a difference of opinion, I don't think it's appropriate and ethical for the auditor to resign. If the auditor believes that he or she does not accept the going concern, the representation, he or she should go ahead and issue the report on the basis of what their conviction is. That's certainly not right. But sometimes what happens is there's a delay in, for example, providing information, and you're stuck with a position that you're stuck with an audit where there's no information coming. Number two, you need to carry out much more work. And clearly the client has told you, I'm not going to pay the fee. I do believe, and I have great sympathy with the auditor in that situation. We are not in the business, or I still say we, I'm not the auditor, but I feel the same because I feel for the profession. They're not in the business of charity. So you cannot tell an auditor that do something for 20 lakhs, which he or she believes is going to cost 60 lakhs. So I think there is a legitimate reason to walk away. If you don't get information, you can't keep resources hanging around forever. You have the right to walk away. But if you have expressed an opinion in your mind, walking away as an excuse to not have to provide that opinion or a qualification is not ethical behavior. That should not be permitted.
Thank you. Mr. PC.
Yes, and taking it up exactly where Ajay Bahl ji left, in that very same section of the new code of ethics that applies in India, I'm sorry, I'm talking about India, and it's again coming from that section that deals with NOCLAR, it's extremely clear for professional accountants in employment and for professional employments who are in the profession working as auditors. In both cases, there is a paragraph, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the paragraph number. There's a paragraph which clearly states that if the non-observance, that's example I'm giving you, sir, that if the non-observance is to a level where the remedy or the real action that would be expected of the professional accountant would be to inform the authorities concerned, then resignation is not a substitute for it. The word is very clear, is not a substitute. Is not a substitute is the phrase which I'm picking up from that particular paragraph. The rest is the sense that I'm conveying to you. So it's very clear. It's very clear there that if we reach a point and there could be non-compliances, lapses, non-reportings or anything to a certain level where it is the duty cast upon, incumbent duty cast upon the shoulders of the professional accountant to bring it out, then merely resigning is not a substitute. The auditor may resign, but must also comply with the duty of pointing it out. The pointing out could be in the report, could complete his engagement and resign and refuse the engagement from next year onwards. Because client continuation is required under SQC1, under assessment of client continuation, the auditor would refuse it. Or even before issuance of the report may still resign, but the fact must be brought to light. And the fact needs to be brought to light up to the level of pointing out to the authority. So that is absolutely very clear. There is no issue about that. And about the powers of NAFRA, sir, NAFRA ke baare mein kuch nahi bolta hu. I never utter a word about NAFRA. They are the Prabhu of the profession in this country at this point of time. And NAFRA has its own way of looking at things. It's the super empowered body by the government of India. And they have their interpretations and they believe in their interpretations. And I'll just give one example. Like a simple thing. You must love your spouse. I won't say you must love your wife because that's not the accepted term now. You must love your spouse. Applies to the wife and the husband. Now this may be a law. This may be an accepted behavior that is required of an individual who's married. NAFRA has its own interpretation of what the word love means. And NAFRA will then say, love means so and so, blah, 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 blah. You did only 3 points, you did not do the remaining 4 points, so you are not doing what a spouse should have done, so you are guilty. NAFRA has its own interpretations, and then NAFRA can also go to the extent to say that this is what the expectation of love in India is because you are in India and only the Indian laws, Indian traditions would apply. If you are trying to defend yourself by saying, I did this and this and this, but it'll tell you, no, it's not applicable. Because this is not what the Indian traditions are. The Indian traditions only would apply here. You are quoting me the overseas traditions, although those traditions may be at a higher level. What I am actually giving you is from the case laws, from the decisions of NAFRA. Now, I'm constrained for reasons of confidentiality not to name, so I'm giving you by examples. And when it suits NAFRA, then in its more recent orders, it will quote examples of the overseas traditions. It quotes examples of the PCOAB in its own reports and its own decisions. Whereas there are earlier decisions where it says that you are quoting standards as as which are not existing exactly in the Indian standards, which are existing in the overseas standards, and you keep on telling them that the threshold here is higher than what is prescribed here. We are actually following something at a higher threshold. They say, no, ye Indian tradition mein nahi hai. So NAFRA will determine its own definition of what loving a wife as per Indian traditions is. And NAFRA will assess you for that. Now, what it is, keep guessing. That's what it is. It's a tough call. It's a great regulator. I'm sure it'll all evolve. We are all through the process of evolving, and I'm sure the Indian accounting profession and the industry will evolve to the next standards. We are in the current pains of delivery or the pains of metamorphosis. Call it whatever you want. But one day we will all evolve.
Yeah. I think very rightly expressed the role of NAFRA, the views of NAFRA, the definitions given by NAFRA, perhaps never imagined by an accountant. So, Mr. Kamal.
Thank you. As you just said, that's rightly so. Internationally, if the reason for not continuing an audit or any engagement is because in the other case, you would have to disclose something to the authorities, I'm sorry, that is not an acceptable alternative. You have to disclose, you have to disclose. But then you should all remember that when you are going to disclose certain information, you have to be sure about it. Why? Because else this might impact the client and might send it into the exact things that you think they are going to. So, for example, if it's a going concern issue, by stating something that is not necessarily true, it might create the conditions for it to be really no more a going concern. So that would be a fault and a professional misconduct on the part of the auditor. So be careful about this. Do take advice. You have got a fantastic network here. And I think that the Institute does provide support in such cases. And I think that you should always use this as a last resort, but also do have a network of professionals within you, within your area that could also help you on that. That's one thing. Secondly, whenever you decide that you are not going to continue anymore, and the incoming auditor will always write to you to ask for professional clearance. Now, there are two ways of doing it. You can set out everything in a formal letter, or you could just say, I'm setting out the reasons, or I'll just say that I have got no professional reasons, but then you could call up that other person and say, oh, these are the reasons I'm doing it. Now it's up to you to decide whether you want to continue with that engagement, but I am not happy to continue with it. That is also acceptable, but remember, again, you have to be careful about this. And this is something that is done internationally for the time being. But the one thing, if it is sanctionable or reportable, you have to do it, and that's it. Thank you.
Just enough has been said for resignation. In standards on auditing, we do not have any kind of word resignation. In standards on auditing, we have word withdrawing from the engagement. And withdrawing from the engagement has been specified in each standard, be it as asset 210, be it is asset 240, be it is as 250, 570, whatever standards on auditing, we are using the word withdrawing from engagement, and withdrawing from engagement is possible in standards on auditing only when the circumstances leading the auditor that it's impracticable to apply the audit process in getting audit evidences. Otherwise, no standard is saying that you just resign and just give up all your responsibilities and all. No, not at all. Our standards on auditing, which are based on international standards on auditing, are not allowing an auditor to quit audit because you are not unable to form an opinion. If you are not able to form an opinion, give a disclaimer of opinion. If you are, whatever opinion you have to give that opinion, unless circumstances leading you that you are not in a position to work even for disclaimer of opinion, you are not getting enough information to justify your disclaimer, to justify basis of your disclaimer, you can resign. And by resigning, again, ADT 3 requires complete description of why you are resigning. Under clause number 8, you have to communicate to the predecessor whenever he asks you that, do you have any professional or other reason to leave? So in that case also, we need to explain, not to explain, but to the limitations of confidentiality. So that's all, no withdrawal. We have to fulfill our duty.
I think on this issue, the panelists have given absolute clarity and I would not comment on it, even in the interest of time. We had a smaller audience, but I have always believed small is beautiful. And I must thank the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for giving me the opportunity to moderate this session. In pre-discussions, even from the panelists, I have learned a number of things and we designed questions which we thought will benefit the audience. I hope that purpose has been served. Thank you so much for being here for the entire term, although we have exceeded the time limit. So with this, I would like to hand over charge again to the anchor.
As we come towards the end of the session on ethics and integrity in accounting, the cornerstones of trust, I'm filled with gratitude for profound insights we have gained today. Our sincere thanks to our esteemed panelists for sharing their expertise and perspectives on this critical topic. Now, as a token of our appreciation, I may invite on the stage respected Central Council members, Kemisha ma'am, to please come up and give a token of appreciation to the chairman of the session, CA Nihar Jambusaria, sir, past president, ICAI, and president SAFA. A huge round of applause, whatever the audience might be small, but the courage and the level of hopes are not. I now request CA, respected Central Council member, CA Mangesh Kindre sir, to please come up and felicitate Aseem Trivedi ji, Director Aseem Trivedi Consulting Private Limited. I request Central Council member CV Chitale sir to please felicitate Kamal Raj Sadien sir, Chief Executive Officer, Mauritius Institute of Professional Accountants. I request Sanjeev sir, please join him on the stage. Respected Central Council member from Delhi. I request Hitesh Mananlal Pomal sir, Vice Chairman WIRC, to please come up and felicitate Mr. Arvinder Pal Singh, who I heard and came to know is going to be the president of the Lions International. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I request respected Central Council member Sanjeev sir to please stay with us and felicitate Ajay Bahl ji, the founder and managing partner, AZB and Partners. Sanjeev Singhal sir. Thank you so much. And at the end of this, I would like to express my appreciation to each one of you in the audience. Your engagement and thoughtful participation had been really valuable to us. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.